Really the business development function has evolved. And I think just as you're seeing new funds pop up almost every other week, there's a bigger and bigger need to differentiate yourself when it comes to sourcing new investment opportunities, thesis development work, and not just relying on intermediated deal flow. Every year we launch new proactive investment themes and theses, and it really starts with idea generation, but then how do we find the most attractive targets in a certain market, flesh out a thesis to determine if it's an area that we want to pursue. And Sourcescrub is really the starting point for all of that and identifying targets. 10 years ago, we'd have interns at Cerent that would scrub lists for us. And by the time they got ramped up and trained on how to, identify employee count, like tracking down, contact information, email addresses, by the time they got ramped up, they would take off, and we would spend, a day or two ourselves on going through lists and, not understanding whether a conference was worth attending or not. And so I think for us and other firms, we now can, take more of a rifle shot approach versus just a spray and pray, reaching out to every company underneath the sun, and take a more targeted approach to sourcing opportunities, finding the 50 companies that are attending a conference that are worth reaching out to, or maybe they're not worth reaching out to at all. So I think it's helped us take a more efficient approach to figuring out whether we should attend conferences. We're saving time and money by not flying out to Orlando to go to an event if there's only one company out of 800 that are worth us trying to reach out to. And so I think you see that across the industry, especially for the BD role and function, where it's become a more efficient, kind of streamlined and targeted process. And especially in a market that's gotten more and more competitive, you need to have a differentiated way to reach out to companies, but also supplement your deal flow versus just relying on intermediated deal processes with investment banks. There's a lot of different variables as to how we can figure out which company is more or less interesting or checks all the boxes for us. It's employee count. One of the first things that I look at when I'm going through a list, and this is top of mind because I was doing this literally yesterday, is looking at employee count growth trends over the year, figuring out, or over the last couple of years, figuring out, which companies, maybe are performing well, they're on the Inc. 5000 list, and, being able to leverage that to find those, 50 that are worth reaching out to. But then as far as the outreach process, it allows you to, not taking the spray and pray approach, but you can take a more tailored or targeted approach to leverage the information that's on Sourcescrub, the recent news or announcements, for each of these companies, were they on the Inc. 5000 list, and being able to take that and take a customized or tailored approach when reaching out to these companies. I think, we and other funds are starting to, take a more targeted approach and leverage that data to be able to do that. AI is top of mind for everyone, or has been, for the last year, maybe 2 years in particular. And when we first started, COVID was a big driver for us in really ramping up our proprietary sourcing efforts. Intermediated deal flow kind of came to a halt first half of 2020 in particular. At that point, we had a database of maybe 300 companies that we had added, from Sourcescrub. And as that has grown, we've now got maybe it's 5,000 companies, roughly. And, keeping track of those businesses over time are the ones that we want to prioritize, and not let slip through the cracks. And also the coverage has expanded across different themes that we're pursuing. And we want to make sure that we're, staying on top of each of these businesses and reaching out and trying to have conversations. And so finding ways that we can, I mentioned before, taking a more tailored, customized approach to the message that we're sending to CEOs, founders in our emails. And so, maybe it's leveraging AI to come up with that more tailored or customized email. One thing that we do in the templates that we use is there's a sentence or two or a few sentences that we'll edit that's kind of more specific to each company, so they know they're not getting a boilerplate, cut and paste email template from everyone, because these companies are getting reached out to all the time. And so if there's a way to leverage AI to kind of customize that message, based on what's available on the website, calling out their specific service offerings, capabilities, customers, customer logos, things like that, I think that would be helpful. I don't think we've even scratched the surface in leveraging ChatGPT or other tools that are out there, AI tools that are out there, and it's something that is certainly top of mind for us this year. And I think a way to, at least for me, and I think about the daily workflow and how I could, just optimize my time, would be to leverage something like this to reach out to more companies and have that tailored email without me spending 10, 15 minutes for each one. More of these companies and founders have said this to us too. I get these emails all the time. And we've had several dozens, hundreds of comments over the years that say your message, this email or message was differentiated from all the rest. So I'm not surprised to hear, in conversations you've had with competitors that, it's just copy paste all these emails. Founders get it all the time. So having a differentiated or customized sort of message to folks has worked out well. In 2020, deal flow came to a halt from investment banks when COVID hit. It was basically the first half of the year that things slowed down. And so we kind of kicked off this proactive thesis because we invested in business services companies, consumer product companies. And then how could we find something that was sort of at the intersection of that, where, whether it's a market research and insights or, retail brokerage or outsourced sales and marketing agency that was focused on the consumer products or retail end markets, where we could leverage just all of our experience within the consumer space, but also our experience in services and be able to make introductions, but also, for our food companies, we could leverage, these types of services and help them grow or expand into other channels, et cetera. And so we kicked off this thesis in, the probably end of Q1 in 2020. Started going through a list, went down the rabbit hole, found 5 companies that were interesting, and then was able to find on Sourcescrub all the other lists that they were on, and then ended up building out a pretty robust set of targets. And I remember it vividly because I was working from my apartment in the city at the time, and it was in the depths of COVID, but sent a really tailored email to the founder of this business. Had it, instead of, like I mentioned earlier, the 1 or 2 customized sentences, put together 2 paragraphs on why we were a differentiated investor and what we could do to add value, given our experience in services and consumer products. And, got a response the next day. This company checked all the boxes just as far as service offerings. They were consulting, sales and marketing, consulting, retail brokerage, working with, some of the largest brands and retailers in the world. And, again, checked all those boxes, reached out, got a response, and, had an initial call, went well. Then I looped in one of our managing partners, Tony Berlio, for second conversation. Also went well. We knew, based on those 2 conversations, that they were going to hire an investment bank, or already had, and we're going to run a process later in the year. And so that happened. They ran a process. We ended up closing the deal. A couple of weeks after we closed, and this was a new platform asset, it wasn't an add-on. The guy that I reached out to initially, one of the founding partners, was like, do you have time to catch up? And thanked me for having reached out. He said the fact that you guys have reached out, had a proactive thesis in the space, and we had a good conversation with you and Tony, that really gave you guys a leg up or differentiated you in the sale process. And because that tie goes to the runner. If we were at the same level from a valuation standpoint, the fact that we had all of those things, or prior interactions, really got us across the finish line there. And on that call, he pulled up the initial email that I had sent him 9 months prior. They get pitched by so many new time funds or existing funds all the time. So they really have the pick of the litter as to who they can deploy or how they deploy capital. And so with how many funds there are out there now, you have to have a differentiated or value-added approach. And I think for us to have the case studies that we do with our existing portfolio companies, any fund can go out and do M&A for an existing platform, but it's what can you do, to kind of roll up your sleeves and get more involved. And so we take a more operationally focused approach, especially or I guess particularly with our consumer products companies. We have two of our founding partners who were operators before they ever went into the private equity world. They've held, the CEO title for a couple of our food companies. And sometimes we'll end up investing in businesses that other firms will shy away from just because, there's not a CEO coming with the business. There's, they don't have an ERP system. There's all these things that we have in our playbook that we can do to be able to add value. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer for it to play out over time. You kind of have to execute on all these different initiatives. And so some of those investments that we've made in the food space have taken longer to, for those initiatives to materialize or to actually bear fruit, no pun intended, for our food companies. But in seeing that was, I guess, the challenge for us in fundraising for Fund 2 is we just hadn't realized some of those investments yet. And so I think having a more operationally focused approach beyond just writing a check and now having the wins on the board to be able to prove that model works or is differentiated from other funds out there, I think has really helped. And, it's a relationship thing too with the LPs that have invested in us. And, over time, as we continue to work with them, we'll continue to gain their trust, hopefully, and be able to have, raise more and maybe larger funds over time. Every year I present at our annual LP or investor meeting, and there's 5 slides. For the last 5 years, I have mentioned Sourcescrub and how that has helped us supplement deal flow, and especially the peaks and valleys that we've had in the market over the last couple of years. And even for fundraising meetings for Fund 2, it was something that came up because they do. This probably wasn't the case 10 years ago when folks would go out to fundraise. A lot less people had a dedicated business development professional. They were only relying on banked deal flow. And now almost every other fundraising meeting, they want to speak with business development professionals to know how their sourcing strategy is different versus, taking a more proactive versus reactive approach. Yeah, I promote the hell out of Sourcescrub with all of those conversations. And it's, it is something that, allows us to tell a different story from what other funds are out there doing.